Let me start by quoting a mother who wrote this to Reader's Digest. Our son Robin was notorious for his room being a mess, and having nagged him for weeks, I finally wrote a note and left it on his floor. It read, "Dear Robin, I wish I was clean and tidy like the other rooms. Love, Bedroom." Next day, I was amazed to find his room tidy, dusted and hoovered, and on the floor was another note. It read, "Dear Bedroom, I hope that feels better. Love, Robin. P.S. You're beginning to sound just like my mother." Well, the topic of this week's passage in our Ephesians series is children and parents, which we all know isn't always an easy relationship. And can I say, don't narrow this down in your mind to the young family plus dog that you often see in the car adverts, because this speaks to us all. Because we are all children of some age, even if, like me, you can only relate to the memory of your parents. And if we're not parents now, a good number of us will be. And even if we never have our own children, there's a role for all of us in bringing up the children within our church family, and maybe for some, in fostering or adoption. So before we go on, let's pray. Father, through this part of your written word, please help us to understand your will for us as children and parents. In Jesus' name, Amen. So, if you have a Bible, please turn up Ephesians 5 verse 21, because that's like the heading to the bit of Ephesians we're in right now, and it says we're to be submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And as we saw last week, that word submit means to recognize and accept that there's a certain order in a relationship. And chapter 5 is about the God-given order in marriage, and chapter 6 starts with the God-given order between parents and children. And first up, it says this: children, honour the God-given position of your parents. Listen to verses 1 to 3 again. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And Paul then quotes the reason why it's right, the fifth commandment. Honour your father and mother, and Paul adds in brackets, this is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. So the word that sums up how the Lord wants children to treat parents is the word honour, which means give due weight to, have high regard for, respect. And that's because of their God-given position, not only as those who brought us into the world, but as our primary educators, and if they're Christian, above all, as our primary educators about Jesus and the Bible. So I remember one of you in our cipher group being interviewed at our baptism and confirmation service, saying, "I am so grateful that whether I've been keen on it or not, my parents have opened the Bible with me all through my life." And that's great to hear. And that's why the fifth commandment comes where it comes. So commandments 1 to 4 are about relating to the Lord. Commandments 5 to 10 are about relating to each other. And within that, isn't it striking that relating to parents comes first? So above the sanctity of marriage, you shall not commit adultery. Above even the sanctity of life, you shall not murder, comes the sanctity of the parent-child relationship. Because if they're believers, our primary educators about Jesus and the Bible are our parents. And even if they're not believers, they are our primary educators about morality and life. Which is why we need to resist it when the state tries to usurp the position of parents. That's what was happening in Scotland with the Named Person Act, which, thank God, was stopped through the work of the Christian Institute. That is what is happening right now with the Scottish Justice Secretary wanting a new law that would criminalise so-called hate speech, even in the home. So you can imagine it. Daddy, can two men really get married? Well, the new law could threaten a parent's freedom, even in their own home, to say no to that. And it's happening with the new relationships education in English primary schools, where the state has stripped parents of the right to withdraw their children from exposure to all sorts of false ideologies. And yet, the European Convention on Human Rights, which we're signed up to regardless of Brexit, says this: the state shall respect the right of parents to ensure such education and teaching in conformity with their own religious and philosophical convictions. And the European Court of Human Rights has said the state, and that includes state-funded schools, is forbidden to pursue an aim of indoctrination that might be considered as not respecting parents' religious and philosophical convictions. So this passage raises big political issues which may mean legal battles ahead for Christian parents. But let's come back to the personal issues and ask, what does it mean to honour our father and mother? And the answer depends on your age. So here in Ephesians 6, Paul seems to have younger children in mind, partly because he says in verse 1 that honouring is basically about obeying, and partly because in verse 4 the children are still being brought up by their parents. So for young children, obeying their parents is central to honouring them. And the problem with teaching these verses at this time of day is that the people they're primarily written to are having supper or in the bath or even on their way to bed. So parents, you need to teach them these verses. And in our family Bible time, over the years, we've come back to the commandments or to these verses to remind ourselves of the Lord's will for parents and children, and to help our children see that the Lord wants them to obey us as appropriate. And in our home, when obedience, let's say, doesn't exactly happen on cue, I am often heard to be saying, what does obedience mean? It means doing what you're told, when you're told, and doing it willingly. And I sound like a broken record, but parenting is often about sounding like a broken record, knowing that your digital children probably wouldn't understand what a record is, broken or otherwise. Well, look at verse 1 again. Children, obey your parents, it says, in the Lord, which means in order to please the Lord. So with the husband-wife relationship or the parent-child relationship, we need to think of a triangle with the Lord Jesus at the top and the husband and wife or parent and child at the other corners. And if both parties are trying to please the Lord and live out his will for them, that's what will make their relationship work. Won't make it perfect because of the sin on both sides, but it will make it work, or at least work better. So for young children, obeying parents is central to honouring them. But as you move up the age range, honouring parents becomes less about obeying them as they tell you in detail what to do, and more about respecting them as you use your growing freedom. So honouring them will involve asking for their advice. It will involve listening to what they say. It'll involve including them in your decision making, even when the decision is now yours. And while you're still under their own roof, which you are as a student, albeit part-time, there will still be some component of obedience. So when I was a student, my then non-Christian parents, both of them, said they didn't want me to give any of their money to church, and so I didn't. Or in uni holidays, if they lent me the car and said, be back by 11, I was back by 11. Honouring your parents as a student means things like communicating well with them while you're here at uni, and not just when you're needing a financial bailout. And when you're back home, it means not behaving as the independent adult that you can be here, and not just treating home like a hotel where you barely relate to the staff. And then as we move even further up the age range, honouring parents begins to include caring for them in older age, as those who've looked after us in our dependency now need us to look after them in theirs. One last thing from verses 1 to 3, and it's where it says, this is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. So this commandment was originally given to God's Old Testament people, Israel, for their move into the promised land. And God said if they were faithful to him there, they would live long there and enjoy blessing, whereas if they weren't, as a judgment, he would remove them from the land, which he ultimately did. And this commandment came with this promise because God's blessing depended on the next generation being faithful, And that depended on the knowledge of God being passed on through this crucial relationship between parents and children. Now, having said that, we may be very faithful at passing on the knowledge of God to our children, but that does not mean that they will definitely come to trust in the Lord Jesus for themselves, because it is a special case of evangelism, and in evangelism, results are completely out of our hands. As the Aussie evangelist John Chapman used to say, results is God's department, faithfulness is our department. So that's verses 1 to 3. Children, honour the God-given position of your parents. And then verse 4 says this: fathers, together with mothers, fulfil your responsibility of spiritual influence. Look on to verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, sometimes in the New Testament, that word translated fathers is used to mean both parents, but I don't think Paul is doing that here, because he could have used the same words for father and mother as in verse 1, but he didn't. So I think he is addressing fathers in particular, and for two reasons. One reason is that it is the father's responsibility to take the lead in bringing the children up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. It is the role of father and mother together, but Christian fathers are primarily responsible. It's part of the headship role that we saw last week. So, for example, if Tess and I were not opening the Bible and praying with our children, the Lord would hold me primarily to account. He would knock on my door, not hers. But the other reason this is to fathers in particular is that they need a particular corrective, which is verse 4: do not provoke your children to anger. I preached on this a while back, and one dad came up to me afterwards and asked, but why is there no verse saying, children, do not provoke your fathers to anger? But we mustn't duck the issue, because I take it we fathers are singled out as more likely to provoke our children to anger than our wives, because we tend to be more harsh or impatient or insensitive or unreasonable. So verse 4 is addressed to fathers, but it applies to mothers and fathers, including those parenting on their own, who really need our support as they do this solo. So in preparing this, I asked our three children if they could think of any ways that I provoked them to anger. And Naomi said, well, all the times you tell us to do something when we don't want to do it. But of course, plenty of those times I'm telling them to do things that they should do, like go to bed. And the anger is provoked by their own sinfulness. Whereas this verse is about how their anger can be provoked by my sinfulness. For example, hypocrisy will provoke our children to anger. Like when we raise our voices to say, will you stop shouting at one another? And there's no more unanswerable reply from our children when we pick them up on something than, well, you do it, don't you? So there's hypocrisy, there's inconsistency or unfairness in how we treat or discipline them. That will provoke them to anger. And so will unreasonable demands, like that their bedrooms should conform to my ideas of order and tidiness. One book I really recommend on all this is Fatherhood by Tony Payne, published by Matthias Media. And when it comes to the list of things that provoke our children to anger, he adds nagging and condemnation, insensitivity, harshness, humiliating them, favoritism, and failing to accept that they are who they are and not who we might wish them to be. So we need to guard against all those sinful things in us which provoke our children to anger, but we also need to face the fact that we're never going to be sinless, and that our sinfulness has already spilled out and will continue to spill out into our parenting, and that therefore one of the most important and powerful things that we can do for our children is to apologise to them whenever we get it wrong. Because not only is that the surest way of defusing anger and the clouded relationship that we might have with them, it's also the surest way of modelling the two most important abilities in life, the ability to admit sin, and the ability to seek forgiveness. And if we model those, not only will it protect their relationship with us, it will lay the foundation for their relationship with the Lord Jesus. So that's the do not provoke your children to anger bit of verse 4. Instead it says, bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So remember that picture of the triangle with the Lord Jesus at the top, parent and child at the other corners. And the Lord Jesus being at the top reminds us that our children are not for us to try to shape in the way that we want, but that the first question for a Christian parent is, what does the Lord Jesus want for my children? And of course, the number one thing he wants for any of us, children or grown-ups, is that we should come to know him. But as I said earlier, we can't make that happen with anyone. And if we're parents, we can't make that happen for our children. All we can do is to provide, albeit imperfectly, the environment of teaching and example through which God can make that happen as and when he wills. And that's not just the environment of the biological family, it's the wider environment of the church family in which it sits, where our children can hear the truth of the Bible from others as well, where they can see it modelled by others who aren't hampered like we are by being prehistoric and uncool, and where they can be learning it and living it out with their peers. And we are hugely blessed in our church family in that way. And I want to thank all of you who are helping to bring up the children of all of us in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, from Scramblers leaders up to Focus leaders, not to mention the many older brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents in Christ, which our children are privileged to have in JPC. And what we're all told to do, verse 4, is to bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And the word translated discipline means training, and the verse on training is Titus 2 verse 11, which says this: For the grace of God has appeared, that is in Jesus, bringing salvation for all people, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright and godly lives. So that says ultimately only grace, only experiencing God's all-forgiving love to us in Jesus will train us to want to live the way God wants us to live. And so the most important thing that I as a parent and we as a church can do for my children is to teach and model the gospel of grace to them. Because my prayer for them is not simply that they become moral or nice. They can do that while remaining total strangers to God. My prayer for them is that they come to know him. So bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. And the word translated instruction means instruction by warning, even instruction by punishment. It's the negative side of training, if you like. And we need to hear that in a culture which is deeply uncomfortable with the idea of such discipline, or even outright against it. And of course, the Lord is against any form of discipline that is harsh, uncontrolled, or an expression of anger rather than an exercise of love. But the main reason our culture is against discipline is its rejection of God and the resulting lack of confidence in any absolutes, which is why some non-Christian parents have said to me recently, I just don't feel I can impose my view of right and wrong on my own children. They have nothing to pass on. Whereas that picture of the triangle with the Lord Jesus at the top and parent and child at the other corners, it reminds us that we're not passing on our definition of right and wrong and what life is all about, but the Lord's. And we can have confidence in doing that. So that's Ephesians 6 on children and parents. And as I said at the start, whether or not we're parents, we're all children, even if we can only relate to the memory of our parents now. So it may just help to end with a quote from Oscar Wilde, who once said this: "Children begin by loving their parents. As they grow older, they judge them. Only sometimes do they forgive them." And maybe after hearing all this and comparing it with our own experience, we need to realise the sinfulness that we have brought to relationship with our parents, as well as the sinfulness they've brought to it. And to remember that the only thing that heals relationships is grace. Let's pray. Father, help us as children to extend grace and forgiveness to our parents and to work out and live out what it means to honour them, even if it's just the memory of them. And for all of us who are parents and for all who are alongside us in bringing up our children within the church family, please help us to teach and model what it is to live under the grace and lordship of Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.